So, last episode we talked about truth and the paradox of truth. I left us off with dispelling my old idea of finding and tethering myself to truth, and I ended the video with a different model, one that rested on the premise that truth, with a capital T, may be a paradoxical concept. We had some great exchanges in the comments section, although I have to admit I expected more dissent than I heard. So while I planned on beginning this episode by addressing counter ideas that were brought up, I think I'd like to just jump right into exploring this new model even further. I'd like to visualize what that emergent lowercase truth might look like on paper. So in order to visualize that, let's first actually graph out what that older model was implying. Originally we have this idea where here's us, we're ignorant, we're barbaric, we're confused, and through the process of the scientific method or theoretical physics or mathematics, through observation, or in the case of the arts, through expression and criticism, we have discovered our routes toward and connected into the truth. Maybe there are moments when we became distracted by leeches and tinfoil hats, but there are in fact plenty of cases where we have successfully plugged into the real. The problem that I proposed suggested that while we think we are plugging into the real, the only thing we're ever actually plugged into is more plugs. And if we traced our wires back far enough, we would just find other people holding on to their ends with as much certainty as the rest of us that they are conduits encased by fact that lead to an inhuman source. So last episode I talked about throwing that model out and replacing it with something else, with something built on maybe nothing. So how can we visualize this? The study of truth in philosophy is known as epistemology. So in this field there was this guy, René Descartes, who offered the solution to this problem, this lack of irrefutable truths, with a famous line: "I think, therefore I am." And I'm a little unconvinced by the total reliance of this particular sentence, because what is the I he's referring to phenomenologically? What is thinking neurochemically? It might not be so universal, these things, but he brings up a point that even the solipsist who believes only in their own reality can't deny, which is each of our undeniable experiences of at least something. One nice contribution to the comments last week was an idea that for there not to be a here of some sort, for there not to be things, would be impossible. So what does this mean? That means there must be some passage of content being experienced by you, or I assume by you. Really, all I can say is by me, but no matter how skeptical I get, I can't deny, and I may assume if you feel the same way, you can't deny either, that we are experiencing something, and so there is something. And it's from that small, infinitely subjective reliability singularity that we can expand our model. At its center, something exists. Fast forward to the present, where we have an unbelievable amount of context and information. There is no single thing, no book, no person, no network that can collectively contain all the information, all the emergent lowercase truth that exists right now. It is literally so big, it's out of reach of any information processor, human or machine. And yet this truth has been built by us. It has emerged, like life, from something other than it. So let's start with just the space, right? We have this plane with a central point. And let's have one dimensional axis which extends out from that center, like a clock face on a table. Let's say the further out you get from this point, the less subjective this information gets. So we'll start in the center with certain feelings. Let's just start numerically. This is information that one person can confer with themselves in a reliable way, okay? So I love apple butter. How reliable is that information? Seems pretty reliable to myself, but not so much for anyone else. So let's add a second dimension now, and this axis represents the level of reliability. How many times it's been verified. So that something extends like a radio tower up from the center past any practical strata. Whoa, look at that go. So reliable. This could be, I think that therefore I exist. This could be, there is a here. Could be, I am that I am. Who said that? I think God said that. Here we have our personal loves, our quirks, our lost memories, our subconscious tastes. And a little further out, we may have our psychology. This is something slightly less subjective and maybe a little more reliable than our preference for certain butters. Here we may recognize patterns of thought and decisions and work with someone else to improve them, to make them more reliable as tools for thriving. There are blogs right now fixing Generation Y's culture of dating that exist in this realm. Outside of that ring, we have the social sciences, sociology, philosophy, anthropology, history. A lot of religious or philosophical ethics may exist in this zone. And by the way, this order of fields of study that I'm following has been touched on a few times, but I'm thinking of the webcomic XKCD, which points out our psychology could be categorized as applied biology, which could be categorized as applied chemistry, which could be categorized as applied physics, which could be categorized as applied math. You could understand your sadness as depression, which you could explore as patterns of negative thoughts and actions, which you could attribute to a surplus of monoamine oxidase A in the brain, which you could understand chemically, which you could frame atomically, which depends on the physics, which depends on the math. Each further field is a branch of a bigger fractal. And as that fractal zooms out, the less subjective it gets, and a greater number of individuals may verify it. The bed of this plane is 0% reliability, provides no aid to our prosperity. These are ideas or statements that are on par with a totally random guess. And as we fill out our sciences, tweak our theories, become more enlightened, mindful individuals, we should see these spikes, these memes, these mountains of thought which lift up the ideas around them and press up against the ceiling of their capacity for reliability. We can very much rely on chemistry. We can very much rely on math, on certain historical events, on medical breakthroughs. And from these advances, our truths thicken. But let's also extend this plane down, underground, into the caverns of reliably untrue ideas. It is very reliably untrue that 1 equals 5. It is very reliably untrue that the earth is flat or that leeches cure illness. New atheists in America have done a pretty good job at pointing out that it is reliably untrue, geologically speaking, that the earth is 6,000 years old. This model, for me, has not only been visually and mnemonically pleasing, it's also helped me navigate conversation and world issues much easier. So, when watching the news, for example, and some highly opinionated pundit begins attacking someone's character rather than addressing their statistics, I would have once said, hey, you're committing a fallacy. The fallacy is known as ad hominem to logicians, but if we take a moment to plug that into our model, it rather elegantly displays the error. A statement on this part of the model cannot be disrupted by a statement on this part of the model. It doesn't have the reach or the mass. The reliability of socialism to provide certain groups with a means to thrive cannot be undone by what kind of ugly things a socialist friend of yours did. The reliability of Christianity or atheism on a metaphysical level cannot be affected by which one Hitler was. Over here in the zone of nutrition, the existence of sensory reactions to certain fats and sugars doesn't have the dimensional weight to make them healthy for us. And as I practiced thinking this way, I began to notice how many arguments centered not around competing facts on the same north-south axis, but rather totally different spaces on the east-west plane, making the argument completely useless to have. There was a time, for me, my inability to appreciate religious ideas came from a similar mistake. I had been placing statements that belonged on this part of the model or this part of the model alongside statements from this part of the model. So, for example, Noah's Ark is useless because it's scientifically false, rather than Noah's Ark is a reliable anthropological document and a powerful cultural story. So let's recap. We are lucky now in this postmodern world to be living with the phrases of great thinkers sprinkled throughout the lyrics of our pop songs. But let's not forget that even though time has deposited topsoil around their ears, we are living on the shoulders of a pyramid of giants. Let's not forget there was a time when the truest thing that we could know was that the demons were among us, or that our God was thirsty for blood, or that some people were born inferior. We had no foundations to build us higher, even if we had the intuition to live a more prosperous life. There are politicians, theologians, newscasters, phenomenologists, playwrights that you've never read who have influenced your thoughts. Their words linger in your mind right next to the residual emotions of that breakup or that time you went swimming in the river, tempting you to believe you're standing on some foundation of reality. But if you're anything like me, you're either in the process of or have recently realized you haven't actually got a clue what reality is. And like optical illusions, we have to admit that projecting patterns onto our perceived world doesn't imply we've found any shapes. But that won't stop us from admiring them, from sharing them, from figuring out why, and from building a magnificent, meaningful life upon them. There is an imperative that comes with this model, I think, to orient your thinking with the topmost layer of the bowl. We have a limited bandwidth of thoughts and a limited amount of time to experience this world. We should be trying our best, not only for the sake of improving our own lives, but for the sake of improving the lives around us, to live as far above this plane as possible. Not down here in hell, but up here in heaven, so to speak. Our arts should decorate the ceilings of these emergent realities. Our comedy should break off the stalactites underneath so that we may recognize them in a safe place. It won't be easy. It hasn't been easy. That rim took centuries to build. We should appreciate that. There is a sturdy wall of sciences that contain our personal lives, that protect them. But this is the exciting thing about our particular time in history, because inside, we are steadily smoothing it out. Anybody who's watching this video has the ability to flesh out the model as much as we can. We are sharing our sciences and our fears and our problems and our love and our humor at faster and faster rates and in more meaningful ways every day. And in here, this is where we mix all the chives and the cheese and cook the hearty stew of our personal lives. That's where we relax. That's where, if we're lucky, or if we work hard enough, and we take our constructed reality seriously, I think one day we can spend our afternoons soaking in the serene tub of a maximally thriving humanity. There's a lot of work to do, and there's a lot at stake. But the water is inviting, and I hope to meet you there. Hey everybody, so glad you watched this week. As some of you know, I'm still adjusting to this web series. I'm trying to get my schedule right for it. And the once a week episode is sort of barely cutting it. So every once in a while, I might hopefully only maybe once or twice throughout this series, I will take one extra week to get this stuff done. If you want to know when that's coming, I'll announce it on my Facebook and I'll announce it on my Twitter. So follow me there. Check out the music. Check out my Patreon. And for goodness sake, share this video. I would love to keep having this conversation with more and more people. So if you liked it, share it. Find some place to share it. I think that there's other people out there who are interested in this. So find them for me if you want. Okay, I'm not forcing you to, but if you want to, that's cool. I would like that. I like it. Bye.